We're live. All right. So I had a great question from a student, an old student of mine who practiced with me for a little bit, around a year in Tai Chi and in the Kung Fu class. And then he moved to India to live in an ashram. And he's like living his best life, meditating all the time and hanging out with cows in the pastures. And I really love hearing from him. Every once in a while, he'll send me a message on WhatsApp, or he'll like send me a voice message like he did recently. And he asked me this great question, and it is related to, and kind of like the flip side of the coin from what I've been talking about a lot this year so far, which is goal setting. And at the beginning of every year, I go hard on this for like a month. I talk about nothing except for setting goals. And it's because it made such a big impact on me, such a profound change in my life, especially since I was 17 when I started with my Sifu. And I had never really set goals or done much of anything. And uh, everything that I say is some version of something that I've heard through my martial arts practice, mostly with my Sifu. And as you can imagine, some of this really great stuff, if you heard it at 17, would like totally change the way that you live your life. So I feel very lucky. A couple of the basic concepts: goal setting, like breaking down your goals and being specific with it. I talked about that a lot over the last couple of weeks, so I'm not really going to talk much about it tonight. But this is one way of dealing with desires that we have. If you are a human being and you are not enlightened, you have desires, and that's just the way that it is. You have a body, you have bodily desires, you have an ego, you have ego desires. Sometimes they correspond, sometimes they don't, but this is what it is to be a human being. And this is why Buddha said that life is suffering, because we have desire. This is the nature of life, is we have desires, they are not met, and so we suffer, or our desires are met and we suffer still because now we want something else. Right? You're walking down the street, you see somebody with a bike, and you're like, man, I would just be so happy if I just had that bike, or like a motorized skateboard. That would make my life. I would be so happy forever if I could just have that. And then you get it and you're like, yes, for 1 second. And then you ride your bike out onto the street and you see somebody driving by with a Prius. And you're like, ooh, if I could have that Prius, then I would really be happy. And you work hard and you save up for years and you buy that Prius and you're feeling great. You're pulling off the used car lot, and then you see somebody drive by in a Maserati, and then you think, that's really what I need. That's going to make me happy for the rest of my life. And we could keep going on. I don't know what's after Maserati, a Lamborghini or something. But it's a never-ending cycle until maybe you actually get the nicest, most expensive, most perfect car on the planet. The only way that you can truly be happy by chasing after your desire is to have the absolute best possible. The problem is, even that only lasts for a second until they come out with a better car. Or you see one in a different color and you're like, oh, this white Maserati, kind of plain. I really want that red one. There's always something more. Grass is always greener. There's always something to try to chase after. And so that is what most of us do, and this is what society tells us to do, and this is what, all the marketing agencies and all of, social media and everything tells us, is you have to get more, you have to get more, you have to get more, and it's a trap. You cannot possibly ever have enough. So that's one way of dealing with desire. It's a quite flawed way. Now you might ask yourself, and you might ask me, well, Sifu, why do you talk about goals then, if that's just a trap? And it is. It's a trap. So I'm going to talk about that. But the only thing worse than having desires and being totally helpless in being able to achieve any of them, even the basic ones that are very important to you, is to be totally unable to achieve anything, right? To have this goal and it's, the examples I like to use from our practice are like, some of you guys are in Tai Chi, and to learn the 108, if you haven't tried it, is a very hard thing. It takes a very long time to learn it. And if you go from nothing, or you're here for a class or a week or a month, and you think learning the 108 is my goal, and I'm not going to be happy until I get it, you're going to be very unhappy for a very long time. So a way to mitigate this is to set more reasonable goals and say, all right, my goal is to come to class once a week. That's very doable. And if you come to class, then you can feel good about that versus never feeling accomplished until you finally finish the 108. And then guess what? The day you finish it, I'm going to start teaching you another form, and then you're right back to where you were. I'm not going to be happy until I learn mirror image. I'm not going to be happy until I learn 24, right? There's no end to it. So martial arts, like many very complex and powerful things in this world, is like a mountain without a top. Or I heard last week, it's like an ocean without a shore. And it's endless, which is great, unless you have the attitude of, I have to finish it now. So don't set your goals to be something like, I'm going to come to one class, I'm going to learn this posture, right? Whatever you can really be in charge of, something that's like a bite-sized chunk. And even that, even as, you know, profoundly useful and powerful as that is still on the level of chasing your desires. Now, the question that I had from this student who's been thinking about this stuff for a long time and really gives me great questions, he had been on this long meditation retreat. I forget how many days long it was, but being in silence and really kind of getting in touch with what's going on within. And he said, Steve, I understand that one of the kind of points of meditation, or one of the things that we might be shooting for, or a goal, would be to be able to let go of desire. And he said, I believe I've heard that it's possible to completely let go of all desires. Is that something that we should try to do? And then related to that, how do I kind of prioritize my desires? How do I not just be kind of caught up in any little thing? And it went on, and it was a great question. I'm kind of shortening it and paraphrasing it, but I want to talk about this, because you absolutely can completely become free of desire. And at that point, you are an enlightened being. You are a Buddha. You are, you know, transcendent and almost certainly dead. If you have no desires, it's almost a guarantee you're dead. So if you have that, well, you don't have to have being dead as a goal. It's going to happen someday. But if you have like Buddhahood or enlightenment as a goal, great, me too. It's also its own form of desire. But let's just talk about that for a little bit. My understanding of it, which is not complete, but I absolutely believe that it is possible to reach this. For sure, it's possible to reach this state in a moment. And this can be what they call like a flash of enlightenment, a samadhi or a satori, I believe, is like in the moment, right? And usually that's how long it lasts. You finally let go of these thoughts and desires. And like me in my first meditation class, I had this moment, and it was for less than one breath, where I finally just felt the breath and there was nothing else there. And as soon as I felt that, I mean, it was peace unlike anything that I've ever felt. And I immediately had the thought, I'm doing it. I'm so good at meditation. Look at me. And lost it immediately. Because without lots of training and practice, that's exactly what happens. Of course, we go right back to the ego, you know, trying to get gratification from whatever you're doing, even if it's ego trying to get gratification from letting go of the ego. It's a big mess. And the longer we train and practice this, the more profound the change is and the more lasting the change is. So I like this phrase. I heard a year or two ago, somebody described it as breaking the habit of ego identification. And on some level, it's a habit. We habitually come back to this kind of thought, this cycle of thought. We habitually come back to our desires. We habitually come back to comparisons and, judgment and all of this. And it is possible to train ourselves out of that with a lot of effort and a lot of time. It's also possible, I believe, to have a super profound experience. And some people have this through psychedelics. Some people just have it in one really great meditation or in some other kind of profound experience. The birth of a child or something, and you get out of yourself and experience something that is so profoundly different that it changes your perspective permanently. And there is probably still some work to be done unless it is like the experience. Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree for, I think, 3 days and fought all the demons of the universe and eventually came out on the other side an enlightened being. It'll probably take most of us more than 3 days to do it, even if it's 3 days straight. But some kind of profound experience. And then I'm sure even the Buddha would come out and say, like, I probably still have more to do. But he was pretty changed enough that billions of people are into what he has to say. But let's pretend that letting go of all desire is a goal of ours, and we're not quite there yet. Ceasing the habitual ego identification is a goal of ours, and we're not there yet. We're working on it. On the one hand, like I said in Tai Chi this morning, the harder you kind of try to grasp it, the more it slips through your fingers. It's like trying to pet a cat, and the cat is not into it. The more you chase it around the room, the more it escapes, and that cat will find a place to hide, but you will never find it. Or you can just sit there, and the cat kind of peeks its head out, and it's like, how come he doesn't care about me at all? And he'll kind of slink over there and like rub up on your leg, try to get your attention, and you just keep sitting there. And eventually the cat's going to jump up into your lap and just lay there and start purring. And this can happen through our meditation, through practicing Tai Chi or any other kind of paradoxical practice like this, where really what is needed is a combination of effort, focus, methodically breaking it down and really aiming at something, but then also letting go completely. Because in the moment, if desire is there, in Kung Fu we call it, in sparring, victory and defeat. If you're obsessed with victory and you must not get defeated, then you are stuck in a very superficial kind of mode of thinking, and you'll never actually completely connect to the moment. You'll never get into Mushin. So this wall scroll is no mind, Mushin. And this is the Zen state that we're trying to get into through meditation, through our physical practice, and it cannot be forced. You can work on it for a very long time, and eventually, no matter how long you've worked on it, no matter how much effort you poured into it, you must let go of the desire, of any desire. And it might last for a moment, it might last for longer, but that's really what's going to happen. When you are really in the flow with martial arts or anything, it's because you no longer have in your consciousness the ego's need to do anything, to accomplish anything, to be good. It's a winning idea. None of that doesn't exist. So the more we practice, the more likely we are to slip into that. So that's all kind of the preamble again. Let's pretend that we're not quite there. So what do we do in the meantime? How do we prioritize desires, and how do we do this in a way that's still kind of taking us in the direction that we want to go, rather than just slipping back into identifying with our desires and trying to chase after them? So prioritizing desires. Actually, yes. Okay, here we are. So one way to think of this is what you want versus what you need. And this is part of the answer that I gave the student that I was telling you about with the question, is it should be fairly simple to tell what you really need. And one way to go about this is, what does your body need, right? Your body needs to sleep. Your body needs to eat. Your body needs to drink water. Your body doesn't need to drink anything other than water. Your body doesn't need to eat every hour on the hour. And you don't need to sleep for 12 hours a day. But you probably need more than 1 hour. You probably need more than a kernel of corn to tide you over. And you probably need more than a sip of water in the day. So your body has some kind of actual need. And this is a way to get at priorities. This reminded me of a great story. And it, like most of the stories I tell, is from this book, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, which is a wonderful book. And you should all read it if you haven't. It's in the dojo. So this story is called The Real Miracle. When Bankai was preaching at Ryomen Temple, a Shinshu priest, I'm going to butcher all of these words, who believed in salvation through the repetition of the name of the Buddha of love, was jealous of his large audience and wanted to debate with him. So this is one monk is like jealous of another monk. Bankai was in the midst of a talk when the priest appeared, but the fellow made such a disturbance that Bankai stopped his discourse and asked about the noise. And so this other priest comes up. He's like, the founder of our sect, our founder, boasted the priest, had such miraculous powers that he held a brush in his hand on one bank of the river. His attendant held up a paper on the other bank, and the teacher wrote the holy name of Amida through the air, and it appeared on a piece of paper. Can you do such a wonderful thing? Bankai replied lightly, perhaps your fox can perform that trick, but that is not the matter of Zen. My miracle is that when I feel hungry, I eat, and when I feel thirsty, I drink. So if we are able to just be in this simple state where we're completely connected to what our body simplify things for us. And for example, the breath. There's nothing that your body needs more than the breath. And when you sit to meditate, sometimes the breath might not be the most exciting thing. Sometimes your mind wants to wander. And if you are really struggling to appreciate the breath and stay connected to it, have somebody hold your head underwater for any length of time. But the longer you get held underwater, the more the breath will seem so important to you. And I say that jokingly. You don't really need to drown, but I'll tell you what, that might give you a very profound experience that might connect you instantly to the importance of the breath, and it might forever change your meditation. Don't go out and do anything dangerous, but you get the idea. So prioritizing our desires and doing it in a way that really is taking us in the direction that we want to go can on some level be as simple as that. Like, what does my body need? And that is usually distinct from what the mind needs, and especially from what the ego needs, right? The ego doesn't need food. The ego needs sushi from Sugarfish, and if the wait is too long, you lose it. I was walking up to our old location, which is right down the street at Bundy and Santa Monica, and there is this Hawaiian barbecue restaurant right downstairs that made delicious smelling food. I know because it would get pumped up through our walls and we could smell it during class. One of the reasons we moved. But I was walking up before classes one day, and I think it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm pretty sure that daylight savings time had just switched over. And so this guy was walking up, and he was an hour early because it hadn't opened yet. And he gets up and he looks at the hours on the door. And I'm not going to say the word that he said because it is totally inappropriate, but I will give you a word that sounds just like it. He stomps off yelling, "Fudge!" And this is the angriest man I've ever seen in my life, because he needed he needed, unlike he's needed anything else in his life, Hawaiian barbecue from Ono Hawaiian Barbecue. And I, kind of laughed at it. It's easy to laugh when it's somebody else, but we all do the same kind of stuff. There is something equally inane that we have wanted so badly at some point in our life, probably earlier today, that we got obsessed. Maybe not like yelling out, profanities in public upset, but some kind of upset that's kind of useless. So what did he really need? He probably could have waited an hour to eat. He probably could have gone across the street to Starbucks and gotten a breakfast sandwich, something else. What our body needs versus what our ego wants and desires. And you can tell because your stomach, like for me, when I wake up in the morning and I have to go to the airport at 7 a.m, there is literally nothing that I would rather not do. And part of the reason is because I can feel the sides of my stomach pressing against each other. It's like a stomach ache that tells me I must eat something. And so as soon as I eat, I feel great. And everybody around me is so happy because I'm no longer hangry and I'm not yelling, but I'm kind of a little bit sharp and irritable. This is one very simple way to go about it. But there are other things that we still will want to prioritize over or maybe just after the basics of sleep, drink, eat. And this is a really important place to look. Beyond just, giving our body what it needs and maybe no more, giving our heart what is really core to us, the way that we view ourselves on a very fundamental level, we want to give that some priority. And maybe no more than it needs, but priority. So I use the example of myself because I'm the person that I know the most about. But for me, teaching martial arts is not an option. It's a desire. And maybe I'll have to let go of that if I'm ever going to become enlightened. But it is so fundamental to me that if I don't do it, I do start to go nuts. And if I take a vacation that's more than a couple of days, I start grabbing my family members' wrists and start locking them, and they don't like it at all. So I gotta get back to class. But it's very much connected to something that I know is very healthy for me. So my desire to teach and my desire to do martial arts, if it's met, I always feel great. And I feel lastingly great after it. It's not like a one-shot thing, and then I got to get more and more right away. If I come in and teach, I could teach one class and be happy for the rest of the day. I could practice for 5 minutes and be happy for the rest of the day. I could get more out of practicing more, of course, but that's kind of different from somebody who's what's very important to me is crack. I mean, it is profoundly important to me. I must have it. And I get that is absolutely the reality for some people. But as soon as you get it, you got to have more right away. And you see the distinction between something that's very healthy and something that is not so healthy, something that kind of pushes us in the direction we want to go and something that kind of pulls us back. And it doesn't have to be such an obvious, silly example for some people. It could be just a little something that is kind of keeping you small, something that is keeping you from going after what is truly important, what transforms you and kind of lights you up in a real, meaningful, lasting way. So for me, it's martial arts. For you, it can be anything. And it does not have to be your job. I'm so lucky and blessed that I get to come in and do something that I love every single day, but it's whatever for you is fundamental. And I know for some people, it is I gotta run. And it's not because I look in the mirror and I feel bad about myself. It's because when I go out there and run, I feel alive in a way that I don't feel under any other circumstances. It might be, I got to spend time with my kids, right? I can do whatever else, but if I don't get to see my kids and spend time with my kids, I don't feel like myself. And of course, these, like any other kind of desire, can very easily tip over into the arena of unhealthy, an attachment that is really not helpful. But there will probably be at least one thing for all of us that is a truly positive influence, and something that, if you make it a fundamental part of who you are and your life, that it makes you grow and it brings you up and it brings everybody else around you up. And this is what there is to prioritize. And that's not what most of us do. Most of us are like, I know that running is really what I love to do. And this is one of the ways that I want to draw this comparison to, is not only what you want versus what you need, but like what you like versus what you love. And so if you're like me, you might like watching TV, and I might like watching TV a little bit too much. And it does not ever get in the way of martial arts, but it gets in the way of other things that are better for me. I do not let it get in the way of martial arts. Sometimes when I get home late at night and my wife is there, I'll let TV take away from our conversation. And we have a tendency to let that happen a little bit much. But I still know somewhere in the back of my mind, like, I really want to just be spending this time with her. So sometimes we just sit next to each other and watch TV. It's fine. It's better than nothing, but not as good as conversing. So that's an example of letting what you like get in the way of what you love. And if you are always kind of feeding what is not really important to you, it's just like a momentary sense of relief. It is just something that lets you kind of veg out, which I get. Very important for many people, especially if you're not meditating and you're like, I need to just forget about my day. I need to sit and veg out in front of the TV. Okay, but meditation might be better, right? So if you know what you love, then spend your time doing that. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it all day, every day. Doesn't mean you have to do it as a job, but find what is incredibly important to you. And then that, you can pour as much time and energy into that as you want, and it will have that kind of positive, like warm, expansive feeling for you and for your life. I think that's everything that I wanted to say. No, I wanted to bring up, so I'll give you, that's kind of an esoteric example. I'll give you a more practical example. In our martial arts practice, like if Zelda is my partner, a simple way to look at this is priorities that are not going to be as obvious as this for the rest of your life, but in practice, it's very obvious. Defense is priority one. So if I'm thinking what I would really like to do is punch Zelda, that's fine. But what I would really love to do is not get punched myself. That way, instead of me just thinking about punching her and ignoring when she punches me, I put my priority with what really matters, right? She's punching me, and that's always my priority, is to get out of the way. And then I can focus on what I like, which is punching her. Thank you. There will be some things in life I feel like that are that obvious, right? Sometimes if I spend a whole weekend just watching TV, I feel worse than if I were punched in the face. Like I feel so groggy and just terrible about myself. So it might be obvious, but usually it's not quite so clear. That's okay. This is part of what we get out of our meditation practice, is to recognize what is truly important to us. Maybe it's the kinds of thoughts or emotions that keep coming up in meditation or around a certain thing. Maybe it's the kind of focus and clarity that we get in meditation and then we take out into the rest of our life. We'll start to recognize what is truly important, rather than just get muddied down by the little things, the little desires, the things that we like or the things that we want versus the things that we need and the things that we love. So when we sit tonight, we'll do about 10 minutes. You can forget about everything that I've said, usually a great idea, and just feel the breath. The breath, more than anything else, is something that you should fall in love with, something that you need. And if you can fall in love with something that you need and something that is there every day, then this is perfection. So this, comfortably. We'll go over a very quick review of ways to sit. So I personally always sit in Seiza because it works the best for my hips, but you can sit cross-legged as well. Just make sure that when you sit, you don't have your knees sticking way up because then your legs will fall asleep. So you can sit in a chair, you can sit kneeling, cross-legged, full lotus, half lotus. Some people think it's a good idea to meditate laying down. You should not do that. You will fall asleep, sleepitate. Some people ask, what if I meditate standing on my head? If you can hold it for a long time, okay. Probably most of us cannot. So just sit upright in a good, comfortable position. So your hands are upturned at the point here. Can be on your knees if you're sitting cross-legged, but if your hands are slouching or sliding and causing your back to slouch, we don't want this. So upturned is usually best, and your shoulders are rolled back. Your chin is parallel to the ground. Your eyes are closed. Relax. Watch the breath. We'll start with some deep breathing. We'll do diaphragmatic breathing from the belly. Start with all the breath out. Breathing in through the nose. Hold for a few seconds at the top. And breathe out. Always breathe in through the nose. Try to hold it without actually stealing off the breath. So you're just holding your chest and your belly full, and then breathe out through the nose or the mouth. Try to breathe deeper and slower. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. Last breath. Double inhalation. Hold it for a few seconds. And double exhalation. Just let the breath come in. Let the breath go out. So you're no longer attempting to fix or change the breath. You're not attempting to fix or change anything. Your mind wanders to some thought. Maybe you catch it right away, or maybe you let your mind wander for a bit. And instead of judging yourself and making it a big deal, just say the word in your own mind, thought. And that allows you to let go without any judgment and return easily and gently to the breath. And try to connect as completely and fully as you can to each breath. Almost like you just got out of the ocean and you're taking that first sweet gasp of air. Nothing matters more. Do that as often as you need to throughout the meditation. Keep coming back to the breath. That goes of all thoughts, worries, and cares. Be here now.